Today it's all about the new jets we got in Battlefield 6 with the Top Gun upgrade. Both of them. Actually, it's more about the A-81F Super Specter, or you could just call it F-18 Hornet. And a little bit less about the Sea-Cat. But I find the other jet, so the Super Specter, is a lot more fun and a lot more interesting because you can also switch weapons on it. We'll take a look at what I think is the best loadout on it, how to play it, a few new things that came with the update, a few bugs that are back again since the new update, all of that in this video. And we're jumping right in. We've been playing jets non-stop for the last few days once you got them. Because of course a lot of people wanted to fly them right now. By the way, there's a little trick for how you can get into the jets faster and safer on the new carrier. I reveal it right now. It's a bit dumb that it works, but that's how it is. So at the start of a round, you always have to run to the jets, right? At least in the modes we're playing them on the carrier. If you redeploy right away, meaning killing yourself right at the start of the round, you're the fastest, at least in the Super Specters. Just a little tip on the side. Dumb that it works, but it does. Nevertheless, let's get straight to the main weapon now, or the cannon basically. So we have two options here, the API and the APHEI cannon, and there's really no question here in my opinion. Definitely the APHEI. The bullets are supposed to be a bit slower, sometimes you don't notice it. I don't know if that's actually the case or if the API cannon in this jet also has the slow bullets. I don't notice a huge difference, I have to say. You notice it most in dogfights or when you're shooting at other planes that are flying in a curve because of leading your shots. The problem with that anyway is that you very often end up right at the bottom edge of the cockpit very quickly. It's actually gotten to the point where I'm almost going back to shooting from third person, but that's kind of rough in this game. In Battlefield 5, I only shot at other jets from third person, and that worked really well there, for me at least. Here it somehow doesn't work. That's a bit tricky sometimes, but since that also happens with the other cannon, the API, the normal main weapon, the APHEI, you gotta deal with that. The APHEI does an insane amount of damage to vehicles, and you also take down helicopters a lot faster with it. Another small plus point of that, well, what does small even mean? It's actually pretty big. With the API cannon you have to hit infantry directly, and the APHEI has a bit of splash damage the way it actually should be. And oddly enough, that's actually pretty well balanced in Battlefield 6. Yeah, because it doesn't really have that much splash damage. So it's not like you can farm infantry super easily with it, but it has a little, so you have to hit fairly precise, but not exactly directly. Which is a really good thing about this cannon also. So we can also use this cannon better on infantry. There's really no question for me here. APHEI all the way, settled, next. Then we come to the pilot's secondary weapon. There's the lock-guided, I won't say much about that. It's a totally normal air-to-air missile. Everyone knows it well. It locks on, you fire, the other guy flares, or doesn't, you know the drill. Now there's the auto-guided, and I take that one. It says it's an AA missile, that's basically true, but it's made kind of cool, I think. It says it's an anti-radar missile, that means it locks on to anything that has anti-air missiles or any kind of homing missile stuff on board. That means aircraft, obviously, so jets, since they always have locking stuff, but you can also shoot at AA with it. It does 200 damage per shot to vehicles, that's already good, so anything that could be somewhat dangerous for you, you can target with it. The only thing that's a bit of a downgrade is that logically you can't lock on to helicopters with it, since they usually don't carry anti-air weapons, unless they attack helicopters running the locking missiles. Then it would work on that too. But that's what you have the APHEI for. Also, it's the kind of rocket where you fire it first and then at some point at the end it changes to an active radar missile. If anyone still remember those from back in the days, those annoying missiles that just briefly beep and then they hit you. That's the kind of rocket it is. So here too, I definitely prefer this one. Then we come to the equipment slot for the pilot. Here we have the heavy rockets. Those are 1-to-1 the same as with the attack helicopters. You have 4 per salvo, then another 4, and then you need to reload. They do that pretty quickly though. Yeah, you can already tell that this is definitely my favorite. They got nerfed a bit compared to the attack helicopters. They don't have a huge splash damage on infantry. It's not particularly easy to aim them, but personally I've been waiting a long time for rockets that you can aim yourself in jets, like from launch. I think every jet should have them. I'd always play them, I think. You have to get used to them a bit when you're aiming and so on. It's not quite as easy as with the attack helicopters because logically you're moving faster in jets. Anyway, the cluster bombs is the second option. They are also good, no question. And a little tip, the lower you drop them, the more concentrated the damage area is, so to speak. That means if you're shooting at a tank or dropping them on a tank, for example, since they are primarily anti-armor cluster bombs, you can basically one-shot it, meaning you can completely take out a tank with 2 bombs. They are already really strong and they work against infantry also, but not as good as against tanks. But I still go with the heavy rockets, though here it's not quite as clear as with the previous 2 categories. So there's definitely some room for personal preference there. I like these rockets that you can aim yourself. They do a ton of damage if you hit all of them, and it's a bit more skill-based. That's also something I like about it. I just don't like all this locking stuff. You're getting locked on constantly the whole time. Yeah, that's why I like flying in Battlefield 5 and Battlefield 1 so much. But that's a different topic. Moving on, we now come to the gunner position. Yeah, well, there's only one choice here too, if you ask me. In the first category, the active lock-on AA missiles, those are super important for the gunner seat. Unfortunately, otherwise it's almost kind of useless. This missile can lock onto aircraft 360 degrees, and yeah, those are really super important for the gunner. Would I wish for another option besides locking, more locking and locking everywhere? Yeah, but it's a modern military shooter, and there are just going to be a lot of locking weapons naturally. There are quite a lot of them by now, but we have to stay neutral here, and that's definitely the best option for the gunner. The jammer that's available there feels to me like they just didn't have another idea and had to throw something into the selection. Yeah, I don't see it at all. You have to look at aircraft with it or anything and they can't lock onto you. But it doesn't do anything for the gunner's seat. The gunner might as well fire a rocket instead. You've got 2 flares anyway, regardless. I'm more for offense than defense in that case. Then we come to the second category. There's really no question here either, because it's completely broken and buggy at the same time. It's actually a good thing that it's a bit buggy. Then it's not as broken as it would be if it weren't buggy. But let's start with the bombs. That's a normal bomb. It's guided in that sense that the gunner can target at a point on the ground. It falls exactly there. I think it's even guided a little bit. That means if you don't hit the vehicle exactly, like the tank or whatever, it still pulls a bit towards it. So it does end up hitting the tank. And it's supposed to punch through roofs and structures to hit people underneath. Yeah, it's actually not bad for a bomb. It even has a fairly large area where it deals damage. It's not bad. And if it weren't for the optical guided one, the TV missile or bomb, whatever you want to call it, so you have a camera on that and you use it to aim. If that one didn't exist and it weren't so insanely strong, I'd say, okay, take the normal bomb. But that thing is just completely broken. You can shoot at anything you want with it. You hit aircraft, helicopters when it actually works, because that's one of the bugs. It does hit, but then it kind of glitches off or doesn't explode or just flies straight through the target. So it's super buggy. Even the drops itself are super weird. It flies backwards. And yeah, so the thing is super buggy. But in this case, that's maybe not even a bad thing, because it's also completely broken. That means you one-shot anything that's in the air with it, which is once again completely ridiculous for a guided weapon. It's almost a bit like the M136 rocket launcher, but even worse, because it also one-shots transport helis. So the thing is really completely broken and way too easy to steer. It should actually be faster and not as maneuverable, I think. The thing is way too easy to use, but that's exactly why it's simply top tier and the best thing you can run once you've unlocked it. For your gunner, mind you, not for you. Then the gunner also has flares, meaning 2 flares per jet. You always need to coordinate with each other, ideally with your respective pilot or gunner, depending in which seat you are, of course, about who flares first and who flares after. Because if you both flare at the same time, you've basically already lost the fight. Unless the other jet doesn't coordinate either. Yeah, in any case, a very interesting dynamic now in Battlefield 6 with the dogfights, especially since the below radar altitude was raised across all maps. That means you can now fly a lot better under the radar. And by now it's actually the case that the dogfights, if you can call them that in Battlefield 6, happen more below the radar than above it, because then you can't get locked. It is a pretty interesting dynamic. Although the anti-radar missile ignore the below radar, they do lock, so another bug. Am I super satisfied with the jet gameplay in Battlefield 6? No, I don't have to say that either, especially since the new physics are also kind of weird. I don't know if it's just a matter of getting used to it, since you were just used to it being different before. But the way the jet behaves, or actually it's more the way the camera behaves now since the update, I don't think that's progress, honestly. I find the whole thing a bit strange, but that's not what this should be about, right? Since this is about the weaponry. Let's come real quick to the Interceptor, the Seacat. Unfortunately, we can't change anything weapon-wise there. We've got the API cannon, which we can't change. We've got the totally normal lock-guided, boring missiles. We've got flares. The only thing that's a bit cool is that you can fold the wings backwards and forwards, like you know it from the Tomcat, the F-14 Tomcat, right? You're super fast when you folded the wings in, twice as fast, let's say, as the multi-role jet. So if you got someone behind you in that jet, fold your wings and you're basically gone. Then when you unfold them, you can fly super slowly. It almost feels like you could just hover in the air. It's a little bit weird, honestly, but hey, it works with this one. The gunner has a rocket that basically works like the SKR-70 from the boat, meaning you steer it basically like a tower at first with your crosshair, and then once it's close to aircraft, it locks and does a ton of damage. So that rocket is also really good. Plus the gunner also has the totally normal active Lock AA rockets, and of course you've each got a set of flares. Yeah, I think the multi-role jet is better because you have to do a bit more for yourself here if you like that. Here it's just a lot of locking again. It's also pretty fun, but I'd say the multi-role jet is better, although the Interceptor is also a lot more maneuverable and so on. So if you want to shoot down aircraft, that's more the thing to use, right? The other one is a bit slower and often in a disadvantage when it comes to air combat, but that's just how the distribution is meant to be too. These are the two new jets. Tell me what you play, whether I'm right, whether I'm wrong. Leave a sub. Here's a button. You can click on that. A nice subscribe is always important. Here, another video in case you need more entertainment and information. Those were my thoughts on the new two jets. Nicely packed up in a little video. I hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, opinion in the comments if you feel like it. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Until then, bye.